All right, a lot of texts coming in. Somebody talked about, because we were debating last hour and the Horns Staff passed about, super teams, which this era of college football is somewhat eliminating, even though I think Michigan and Ohio State the previous 2 years were really damn talented. Indiana is an outlier, but maybe it is the new wave because parity is starting to separate. I just saw Georgia lost another, top player or good player, developmental player to Purdue.
Yeah.
I mean, these players are just spreading out like they didn't used to, and that league can lead to this where a well-coached team, I don't know that we're seeing it all across the SEC. The SEC was so much more talented and better than everybody for so long. Because remember, the SEC, when Alabama and Georgia were dominating this, a decade of college football, throw in LSU and Clemson in there.
Right.
They were dominating with all these studs from the South with 2 and 3 on the 2 deep and 3 deep, just 5 stars. And then they were going and recruiting like the state of California because the Pac-12 was falling apart.
Right.
And C.J. Stroud's going to Ohio State, and Bryce Young's going all the way cross country to play at Alabama. Brock Bowers is leaving California to go play at Georgia.
Georgia, right.
And so, now these guys are dispersing and they're playing. But, somebody said, I love because one of the texters said, I love the parity and the unpredictability more than that, but we also have to get a control of the transfers. These guys transferring 3 and 4 times is ridiculous. I totally agree with that. Can they get to an agreement of a one-time transfer idea? And then if you do want to transfer again, then there's a penalty, a one-time free transfer. And, it just goes back to something that a lot of us have been saying for a long time. Now that we're here and they're trying to rebuild the dam while the water's already rushing through it,
right, yeah.
Which is almost engineering impossibility. I go back to the paper, the thesis I wrote 30 years ago. There were ideas in there that I researched and people had these ideas, so these aren't unique to me. But the idea was you guys, and certainly over time on the radio, those became. I said this to you yesterday at the end of the show. Think about if you went 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and the NCAA said, you know what, our lawyers are telling us we're going to lose these cases. We got to get ahead of this. The dam's about to come down.
Right.
What can we do? Think if the NCAA with some leadership and some vision came out and said, okay, we're going to have 85 scholarships, for free tuition. But since we are generating so much revenue, and these guys are human billboards for Nike and all the other things, we are going to pay each one of our student athletes in football, a revenue-generating sport, $100,000 each. We've got the money to do it. We're going to give them $100,000 each, 85 players. We're going to give them, because they want freedom of movement, we'll give them 1 free transfer inside of 4 years. We'll also give them because this is something I wrote in my paper, my thesis. You have to incentivize school because they're still being paid. The main currency for them is academics.
Right.
For the ones that want it, they're getting a free education. Not everybody gets that. I didn't get it. You didn't get it.
I didn't get it, no.
So that can't be sneezed at. But for what these coaches, when coaches are hitting $10 million salaries in the stadiums, they got $100,000 for each player. And so now you're not separating each player. The quarterback's getting $100,000. The left guard's getting $100,000.
Yeah.
Is that fair? But do you think this would have stemmed some of these lawsuits? Think it would have slowed some of this down? Probably. I would argue it would have. You got ahead of this because you're trying to be proactive, and you can do that without calling them employees. You can call them stipends, or you can call them bonuses, and you can also tie it to graduation. Guys, you're going to get this $100,000, but not till you graduate. We'll pay it to you every year, but you've got to be on. You got to stay on point to graduate. You got to be getting your grades. You got to stay eligible, and then when you do graduate, we're going to give you the $400,000, and if you finish it within 5 years from your start date, we'll give you an extra $100,000. So now you got $500,000.
There you go. There's your incentive.
And if you get a master's, you're getting $50,000 on top of that. So you're walking out with a degree that was paid for by the university, and you're walking out with $500,000 to $550,000 to begin your career. Because I always said I argued for the 95% or 97% that will never play in the NFL. Who also give up their bodies, who also put their bodies at injury risk and long-term concussions and all that. So those 3% that's people used to argue, well, they're all going to the NFL. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
But they are generating the revenue.
They are.
They are putting their bodies on the line. Okay, so I walk out as an offensive lineman at Texas for 4 years, got my degree, and I got $400,000. Is that bad?
No.
Then I got to transfer once if I wanted to?
Yeah. Better situation, better opportunity.
So when people say
starting position or whatever it might be.
Yeah, people will text and say, what do you mean by, incrementally changing the system to avoid where we're at? Well, that's it. I mean, you start with that. Maybe it's $50,000. I don't know.
Right.
Whatever you could afford, but do something. Don't just, bury your head in the sand and dig your heels in the ground and say we're not doing anything.
And you can still get these NIL
Because now you
deals.
can't go there because now the water's rushing.
Course,
now
right.
you are lost.
No.
And now you're trying to rebuild the dam while it's happening, and that's impossible. Could you have prevented a lot of this with some leadership? I would argue so, and I did argue so. But either way, here we are. And I agree with you, though, that players shouldn't be able to transfer 3 and 4 times, but they've lost every court battle.
TJ Finley, I believe, is on his 7th transfer. Is that right?
Well, what's really sad about that TJ Finley story, who's now where, at UTSA? Where
he went to Incarnate Word.
Incarnate Word. I knew he was in San Antonio. He's on his 7th team in 7 years.
Yes.
But did you hear his quote, which goes to my point about incentivizing school and graduation?
I did not. What did he say?
He said, I'm not ready to start delivering Amazon packages yet. He said that. I didn't say that.
Hey, all those credits aren't going to transfer.
Yeah. So he's 7 years
7
playing college football.
Yeah.
And his best option is Amazon delivery, which not sneezing at that. That could
No,
be a good
absolutely
job.
not. Right. You can
But
make some cash doing
That's
that.
shameful because he's been allegedly going to school for 7 years at 7 different schools.
Right.
And he's like, no, I get paid. I'll get paid more doing this than I will delivering Amazon packages. Yeah, we're failing, but it's 15 years in the making. Don't talk about 5 years in the making. All right, let's get to another E-Blast brought to you by the law office of David J. Lopez. It's amazing. So, you just went through, and Noah knows the coaching carousel. Looks like Robert Saleh to the Titans, Jeff Hafley.
Yep.
The Dolphins and the Titans in the AFC going with defensive head coaches because, we got 4 teams left, and we've got Sean Payton's offense, Mike Vrabel's defense. By the way, the championship games, Sean and Mike against Sean and Mike. And,
you're right.
One's offense, one's defense. Sean McVay, Mike McDonald.
Hey, how about that?
Sean Payton, Mike Vrabel. So both are successful. You can win with either side. So Harbaugh to the Giants, which is not good news for the Cowboys because now John Harbaugh's in the division. What if he rights that ship? That's not good. Yeah. He becomes their 5th head coach, 7th counting interim since Tom Coughlin resigned, and he brings an adult to the room, which is exactly what they needed. Also, the Atlanta Falcons with Kevin Stefanski.
Right.
That is a done deal. It looks like Green Bay is holding on to Matt LaFleur. He's not going anywhere. And now the 2 you just mentioned. But the ugly reality of the NFL popped up again yesterday with the firing of Sean McDermott in Buffalo. Brandon Beane will keep his job and try to find the replacement. There are a lot of people I've read in Buffalo aren't real happy with his roster building. But again, when you make this many runs and you get over the cap and you trade for Von Millers and you try to bring in Joey Bosa and you're making the moves, you're going to get really expensive. And if you don't cash it in, you got to tear it back down. And somebody's got to start over. And I feel bad for Sean McDermott. Realize this, the Bills organization had gone 17 years without a single playoff appearance when he arrived.
Yeah, right.
He righted the ship, and he's been 9 years at the helm and has led them to the playoffs 8 times. This is an organization that didn't go to the playoffs for almost 2 decades after the Marv Levy success of the 90s. But in 7 of those 8 trips, he also had a Superman quarterback like Josh Allen. And I know Josh Allen got better. His first couple of years in the playoffs, he was raw, kind of like C.J. Stroud. We're watching him. But Josh Allen became Josh Allen. And we know, much like John Harbaugh didn't capitalize on his 2023 team with the MVP quarterback and the number 1 defense, they didn't win it. And so John Harbaugh's out because they have to begin to tear it down.
Yep.
Sean, the year that they had the lead with 17 seconds to go on the road at Kansas City and should have gone to the Super Bowl, that was their best team. That team should have won the Super Bowl, and they didn't.
But they're going to look back at that on the defensive side of the football, not getting it done, and it's a defensive-minded coach.
That's on him.
Right.
And that's the ugly reality, but it's also the irony that in 7 of those trips, his Superman quarterback did everything possible and more to win, and it was McDermott or the defense or mistakes lost the game. It wasn't Josh Allen, but in the game that cost him his job,
it was Josh Allen.
It was Josh Allen.
And the offense.
And 4 turnovers.
Yep.
And Josh Allen's in tears in the press conference because he knows. If you want to know why Josh Allen was crying, it was that
he knew.
Guess what? I just needed to play a better game, and we would have won that and still been playing. And with Jared Stidham now, the quarterback for the Broncos, they're probably going to the Super Bowl. Sean McDermott's the head coach. Josh Allen finally gets to the bowl, and we all root for him. But he had a 4-turnover game and missed a wide-open walk-in touchdown with 16 seconds to go in the game that would have won the game. He knows that.
Yeah.
And I would also say this to Josh Allen. It's not to criticize him. The guy's been beat to hell. He's carrying this team. Remember the Jacksonville game? He had a knee injury. He had
that was a physical game.
And then he's playing the Broncos. He 4 turnovers. End of the day, you're not being
some bad turnovers too. I mean, that fumble there that gifted them 3 points. The missed throw also to win the game. I mean, this was on Josh Allen, which usually it would be on. You can blame Sean McDermott, and he knew the writing was on the wall. You can't tell me that ownership and the GM did not have a conversation about, all right, this if this doesn't work, obviously they waited till probably after the fact of the outcome of the game, but. Is he good to go, Josh? Because we're riding with you, just like what Baltimore did. They're going to ride with their MVP quarterback over the coach.
Well, and yesterday I kind of described the parallels between Steve Sarkisian at Texas and DeMeco Ryans in Houston, because I think both teams go into next year, because we talk about the windows that Baltimore missed, which was 2023 and 2022 for the Buffalo Bills. I would argue 2026 is the window for DeMeco Ryans and the Texans. It is, because that defense comes back intact, if not better.
Yeah.
They have another offseason to attack, find a replacement for Joe Mixon if he's not coming back. Put some more, established linemen on the offensive line. Another round of draft picks. The offense improves. And to Jack's point earlier, before the end of the hour, go get Mike McDaniel, the now outed coach of the Dolphins, if he's available. And much as you want to keep Nick Caley and keep some continuity with the offense, Mike McDaniel, who you worked with in San Francisco, this is what Steve Sarkisian is doing with Will Muschamp. I like Pete Kwiatkowski. He's been here all along, but we got to upgrade. Yeah. And I have to upgrade. Right. So we're going to hit the portal. We're going for experience, and we're going to capitalize on Arch Manning's final season. But DeMeco Ryans in the same spot, because I would argue next year is his John Harbaugh 2023. It's his Sean McDermott 2022 season, because Houston will have, going into the next season, the best defense in the AFC, maybe the best defense in the league.
Sure.
They all come back. The core of it's under 25 years old. They should have their best defense with Matt Burke calling the plays. And what DeMeco Ryans has to do, obviously everybody saw C.J. Stroud, but as we talked about a lot yesterday, he didn't play like that all year long. Something is up with C.J., but you're DeMeco Ryans. This is your opportunity to get the right offensive. If it's Nick Caley, it's Nick Caley. But you and Nick Caserio have to put the right pieces around it. If you see the rookie year that he had, where he threw 23 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions, and took the league by storm, maybe it's a bit of an aberration. So what do you have to do for a quarterback who you still believe in? You got to run the football. You got to line up and run the football and be dominant in the run game. That's your offseason mission now, DeMeco. Find that coach.
Well, Mike McDaniel likes to run the football. We see that with H-Chan and all those cats.
So go find a dynamic running back. Make Woody Marks your number 2. Get these young receivers you drafted. Because Texans fans are rightfully saying, why did you took one offensive lineman in the top three rounds. You took Ariante Ursary,
who's been good,
into a starter.
Right, I would say who's been impactful.
But you could have drafted interior players with your first pick at 34, where you took Jaden Higgins, and then you took Jalen Noel in the 3rd round. That's where you get good interior offensive linemen. They didn't do it. They took receivers. So now you have to go get those interior linemen, and those receivers have to become big-time players around Nico Collins. And they also need to find a tight end, by the way. That is something they're going to be, Dalton Schultz got hurt in the game. Cade Stover's not developing like they think. But I don't know. That's, to me, do you see the parallels?
Yeah, I do.
Where it's a kind of a Sark prove-it year?
Sure.
Because
you already have all the pieces on defense. Now it's your job to go get, and GM, of course, those guys on offense that you need. If you could get a guy like Mike McDaniel, maybe wishful thinking, still, you bring him in and talk to him.
And the reason in the E-Blast it's so pivotal, when you build these things, I mean, what Kurt Signetti did in 2 ridiculous years is ridiculous, right? But
there's no real comparison to it.
Usually there's a build. There's a 2 or 3 or into a 4th year build.
Right.
And as we said with McDermott and Harbaugh, they missed theirs. DeMeco comes into his this year. Because if they don't get it this year, then you got to decide on C.J. Stroud and a massive new contract, or you're cutting him loose, which means you're starting over at quarterback.
Right, and then your 5-year theory is right. There it is.
Now you're in year 5.
Right.
But I think just my read of Houston and their roster, this coming season is going to be their best year.
Sure.
It's be their most talented team.
It has to be, right?
And I think we all knew going into this year, I had optimism big time, and they went 12-5 and won a playoff game. But we knew going into the year there were question marks on the offense still.
Right.
With a first-year offensive coordinator, and then when the Joe Mixon injury cropped up, and that kind of came out of nowhere. You were stuck without a running back. Have to address all that. But Houston should be every bit as good as any team in the AFC next year. But here, Denver's not going anywhere now with the young quarterback. And
Patriots are definitely not, right?
And Jacksonville's better.
That's what I was going to get to. Jacksonville's better, but a team that had a 3rd-place schedule, one of the worst teams in football, their rise to winning the division. It's important for the Houston Texans to win that division, not just get in the dance. Because I don't know how much of that was I don't think a lot of it was just the elements when it came to C.J. Stroud's play, but if you could have that at NRG, amongst your home fans, that's a lot different.
Well, look, again, people have talked about C.J. Stroud the future. Next year we'll decide C.J. Stroud's
That's the
future.
Crystal ball is the outcome.
You're going to pick up the 5th-year option, but you are not signing him to a long-term deal. That's obvious. He's got a prove-it deal.
It's a prove-it year.
He's got to show it, and if he doesn't perform better, obviously this whole DeMeco Ryans window, because what we're talking about is a coach and a quarterback. We thought C.J. Stroud was on a trajectory to be a top-end quarterback. DeMeco Ryans has proven to be a really good coach, but that's why we cite Sean McDermott and John Harbaugh and Sark. You mean when the window's there,
right?
You got to cash it, and it was almost a matter of time when Sean McDermott didn't win that game inside 20 seconds at Arrowhead Stadium, and John Harbaugh didn't win the Super Bowl or get to it when he had Lamar Jackson playing like an MVP and had the #1 defense in all of pro football, and they didn't get through it.
Because that's not just you're not going to have the #1 defense for 5-6 years after this. You can't afford that.
Because that's what happens, right?
That's what happens in football. It's attrition, right?
You have to re-sign Lamar to a massive contract.
Right.
They take your defensive coordinator to Seattle, where he's now almost going to the Super Bowl. That's the way the NFL works. They take your best coaches. You draft late in the draft so you can't get impact players. When you're on the doorstep, you got to cash it. And I think that's where as we enter, and we'll talk more about this with Sark coming up, and I think DeMeco Ryans and Steve Sarkisian are in a similar spot in 2026.